And you'll see that there's a pop-up box on your screen there. If you click got it, that box will go away.
What?
Okay. Got it.
Fantastic. Excellent. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this morning on this absolutely beautiful day. You know, it's finally starting to settle in. I think spring is actually here, but you don't want to say it too loudly. Someone might hear us. I will let you know. I do have the window to my office open, so you might hear some birds chirping in the background, but hey, I think that's nice ambiance. A few other things to let you know. I do have dogs here at home with me, so I have the door shut, but if they start barking for who knows whatever reason, then I will quickly mute myself and we'll try to continue on as quickly as possible. The one last thing I want to let you know, if at some point in time my voice sounds hoarse or I have to stop and cough, please forgive me. I'm just getting over a bout of a cold. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get started. As you can see on the screen here in front of you, it's a couple of things that we wanted to touch on before we get into the presentation today. In regards to privacy measures, we believe that Zoom has taken proper measures to ensure everyone's safety and security and privacy for today's meeting. The second part is that for the presentation today, it is for education and knowledge building purposes only. So of course, everyone's situation is different. Everyone goes through different experiences in life. And so I'm not here to give anyone any particular advice, just to give sort of general overview and knowledge, if you will. And of course, I will do my absolute best to answer your questions anytime throughout the presentation or at the end. You're very welcome to ask your questions whenever you like. You can either unmute yourself and ask the questions verbally, or you can type them in the chat box. So that's entirely up to you. Other than that, if there are no questions or issues, we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is our topic for today. We're talking about the 10 warning signs of dementia. And we're also going to be talking about how the Alzheimer's Society can support those who are currently living with dementia or are currently being diagnosed with dementia, and also the people who are supporting those individuals as well. So again, just a quick overview of what we'll be speaking about today, but we're going to go into the first topic. And this is the idea of having a brief understanding of dementia. I like to start a lot of my presentations off with having, again, a brief overview of dementia, just so that we're all on the same base level of knowledge, or baseline, if you will. And actually, come to think of it, I forgot to introduce myself really quickly. So I'll quickly do that first. My name is Olivia. I work for the Alzheimer's Society of Brant, Haldeman, Norfolk, and Hamilton, Halton, and I'm one of the public education coordinators. So get that out of the way. Please excuse my dogs. So we're talking about understanding dementia and what this term actually means. So I just like to ask, because I'd like to get some participant involvement and conversation going. When you hear the word dementia, what comes to mind for you? What do you think about? And again, feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat box, whatever you prefer.
I don't know where the chat is.
Where is the chat?
Here, down there.
Where?
Oh, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if you want to just say your answer out loud, you're more than welcome to.
Okay.
So when you hear the word dementia, what comes to mind for you? What do you think about?
Is it me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I just think of it as any other person, but it just has a dementia.
Mental.
For me, it's like, it's a word. It's just a word.
That's true. Absolutely. And you're right. You know, even if someone is diagnosed with dementia, it doesn't mean that they're a different person. They're still the same individual they always have been. Absolutely right. Are there any other answers from any of the other folks in the group here today the words that you associate with dementia or different descriptions?
What do I say? I say all kinds of terrible things.
Nobody else?
Oh, Glennis, go ahead.
I think of confusion, maybe some disorientation, loss of being able to put your finger on the right word or knit together a sentence. confusion in timelines, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You've certainly hit the nail on the head. However, it's interesting to know that, everyone's got a different understanding and a different comprehension of what dementia means. But I'm just going to quickly clarify it for you all here. So it's also important to understand that the word dementia itself is not a disease and dementia is not an illness. The word dementia is a descriptor, and it's really what it is a set of symptoms. So if somebody is diagnosed with dementia from a physician, that just means that they are experiencing some or all of the following symptoms that I'm going to show you. And there are a lot of different reasons as to why someone may experience the symptoms of dementia. So the first one is loss of memory. This one's pretty common knowledge. Most people associate memory loss with dementia, but it's not just what dementia is. There's so much more outside of memory loss. But I will say that for loss of memory, in the earlier to mid stages, we're looking at mostly short-term memory loss. Whereas a person with dementia, their long-term memory is usually quite intact and they can rely on it very well. Another symptom that can be associated with dementia is a decrease in understanding. So this is, your understanding is your comprehension of the world around you, being able to understand different environments, social cueing, being able to read something in your environment. For example, you go into a new coffee shop that you've never been in before, and most of the time we're able to kind of follow the crowd and read the signs and figure out the environment without any assistance. However, for someone living with dementia, a new place like a new coffee shop or wherever it may become a bit more confusing or disorienting for them. Another symptom associated with it is a decrease in judgment skills. So when we're talking about judgment, this means a couple of different things. What it really boils down to, though, is decision making, being able to decide, what is right versus what is wrong, being able to judge what is appropriate in the moment, maybe what's not appropriate, a lot of different things. And with judgment also comes things like anticipation, planning, organization as well can also become affected. We may also see a change in mood and behavior, and I'll explain why that is in just a moment. So you might notice more frequent mood swings as time goes on, and changes in the individual's, what you would call their normal behavior, what they normally act like. And lastly, one other very common symptom with dementia is a decrease in language. Now, of course, when we think of language, we mostly think of just talking, but language is an entire process in and of itself, which means that it's all about the output, but also the input of language. So being able to comprehend, visual text or listening to someone who's talking to you, having that all make sense. Now, before I explain why all of these symptoms are associated with the word dementia, I wanted to make something very clear that dementia is not a normal part of the aging process. It's not supposed to happen to us, but sometimes it does. And there's a lot of things that we can do to lower our risk, but there is nothing that we can do to prevent it altogether. We all live with a certain level of risk for developing dementia as we get older in our life. Now, what is the reason for all of these things on the screen here? Why do we see all these different symptoms associated with this word dementia? And it all has to do with one organ in your body, and that's your brain. When you hear the word dementia, you can automatically think of permanent damage to somebody's brain. And depending on where the damage is, if it's in the frontal lobe, occipital lobe, depending where it is in the brain, will determine what kind of changes we're noticing in that individual. So that, again, describes as all the different symptoms that we see. So again, when we think of dementia, of course, we think about memory loss, but it's so much more than that. I'll give you one more slide just to really explain this term dementia and how it's neither a disease nor illness. So we can think of the word dementia as an umbrella term. It's very broad, very general blanket statement. However, there are different illnesses and diseases that can cause the symptoms of dementia. so that fall underneath this umbrella, if you will. I'm going to show you the 4 most common causes. So that is Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, and frontotemporal dementia. So these are the 4 most common types of dementia. However, there are well over 100 various types of dementia, or 100 various causes of dementia, if you will. So of course, we know with Alzheimer's disease, it's the most common form of dementia, hence why we're called the Alzheimer Society. I asked if we could change our name to the Dementia Society because that would be much more descriptive and accurate, but apparently rebranding costs a lot of money. Oh well. So of course, we know Alzheimer's disease, most common form of dementia, but we also have vascular dementia, where an individual, their brain is being damaged due to lack of oxygen supply and blood supply, or possibly severe brain injury or brain damage. Oh, thank you very much, Mildred. Then we also have Lewy body and frontotemporal dementia. And of course, each of these types of dementia affect different areas of the brain at different rates and different ways. And that's really how physicians tell the difference between all of these different illnesses and diseases, is that they track the symptoms and compare them to the known symptoms of other illnesses to determine what kind of dementia somebody may have. So at this point in time, I've thrown a lot of information at you. Are there any questions before we continue on? Just waiting a minute to see if anyone types anything in. Excuse me. Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing anything, so we will continue on, and hopefully that gives you a little bit more understanding and perspective of this word dementia. But from going on here, we're going to be talking about, of course, the warning signs, but we are going to be talking about the warning signs that are more centric to Alzheimer's disease, only because it is the most common form of dementia. I should also mention too, there's actually one name that's not on the screen here that should be on the screen, and that's the term called mixed dementia. And what that means is that an individual can have more than one kind of dementia at the same time, which of course just complicates matters altogether. So the next question is, what's the point? Why are we here today? Why are we wanting to learn about the warning signs of dementia? What is the purpose of it? Well, I should also let you know too, when we're talking about these warning signs, there's a few things that you want to keep in mind. Now, of course, when I talk about these warning signs, some of these might resonate with you and go, oh my gosh, I've done this kind of thing before. But there's 2 things that I need you to keep in mind when you're listening to these warning signs. And those are the terms frequency and severity. So as you hear me talk about the 10 warning signs, think about, okay, well, if I know someone and I recognize somebody who's showing these warning signs, how frequently is it happening? And how bad or how severe is it when it is happening? Is it impacting an individual's day-to-day activities in life, or are they able to manage these different challenges? Now, a few other things too as to why it's important for us to learn about the 10 warning signs of dementia and become more aware. The first thing is early diagnosis. The more aware we are, the better understanding we have about dementia in general, the better we may be at identifying whether or not someone might be living with this challenge or with this possible diagnosis. And if we can have those conversations with this individual, or even with ourselves, whoever it may be, we may be able to have this person get diagnosed earlier on, and the earlier the better. Now, the reason that early diagnosis is so important is that we can offer added support to the individual earlier on in their life, which will help to improve their overall quality of life as well. So we can look at what community resources are available. Of course, something like the Alzheimer Society is able to help, and other resources as well. We may even be able to implement some medications. And when I say we, I mean physicians, of course. And of course, you know, when we learn more about dementia, excuse me, and we become more aware, if we have awareness, it equals understanding, which equals more compassion. And I think, speaking from a professional point of view, I've seen a lot of, excuse me, sorry for that. I've seen a lot of negative stigma attached around this term dementia, and also attached to the people who are currently living with dementia. So of course, the more awareness and understanding we have, the more compassionate we can be of their overall experiences. Excuse me. Still getting over a bit of a cold, my apologies. So we're going to jump in now to the actual 10 warning signs, and we'll discuss them one by one, and I'll explain to you and give you a few examples of what each warning sign may look like and what you can kind of keep an eye out for. So the first one is memory loss that affects day-to-day abilities. And the big emphasis is on affecting day-to-day abilities, because we've all forgotten things in the past. It's happened to every single one of us. Oh, where did I leave my keys? Or where's my phone? Or where's the TV remote? But eventually, with a little bit of problem solving, we're able to find those particular items or look for the information that we're seeking. You see, the biggest thing, one of the biggest differentiators, if you will, between someone who is experiencing what we call normal forgetfulness or age-related forgetfulness and someone who's living with dementia is this ability to problem solve. If you're faced with the issue of, oh shoot, where did I leave my keys? Well, what are you going to do? Well, you'll probably maybe retrace your steps, look in the last place that you saw the keys. Maybe you'll ask somebody, hey, have you seen my car keys recently? That's problem solving. However, for someone living with dementia, that ability of problem solving may become a little bit more challenging as time goes on, where they know they're looking for something, maybe they just don't know where to start or how to initiate looking for that object or for that information, whatever it may be. So a few examples of what memory loss that affects day-to-day abilities may look like is this struggle to retain new information. Again, thinking back when I was talking about short-term memory loss versus long-term memory loss, if we think about short-term memory loss, it means that new information that I've recently been told, I am much more likely to forget it than information that I knew from a long, long time ago that is very deeply cemented in my brain. For example, where I grew up, where I went to school, what I did from a job, did I have a family, all of these things, all that stuff that happened in my past, I know that very well. I can rely on that information. It's very strong. But the short-term memory, the short-term information, that's where I struggle. Maybe I'm forgetting to pick up things on the way home from work. For example, I need to stop at the store and buy some milk. Maybe it's, I'm forgetting new appointments that are coming up, or I'm forgetting to write them down in my day planner. So a lot of different things. But again, looking at the difference of, is it affecting my day-to-day life, or is it just normal forgetfulness that I can problem solve my way through? The second warning sign that we can look for is difficulty performing familiar tasks. So this, and I will say too, you'll notice a lot of overlap between the different warning signs and a lot of the similar reasons for each one. So this difficulty performing familiar tasks could have a couple of different reasons behind it. It could be memory loss, or it could be something that we call apraxia, which is the brain's inability to tell the body what to do or how to move or function properly. For example, getting dressed in the morning, doing up a button shirt might become really challenging, not because of the body's physical inability, but because of the brain's inability to tell the body what to do. Again, thinking back to all of the possible symptoms that we're looking at or possible warning signs, everything will be linked back to the damage in someone's brain. So another example of this one could be, I've driven home from work the same route every single day for years now. I take the exact same route, but now I'm starting to find that I'm not quite as sure of myself. Maybe I took the wrong turn. Now I've gone down the wrong street and I'm getting lost. That is a bit of an more extreme example. But again, it's any kind of familiar task that the individual has been doing for quite a long time. The third warning sign we can look for is problems with language. And again, you'll start to notice that a lot of this information we heard even earlier on when I was describing what the term dementia means, but just to give you a few more examples. So problems with language. That good old tip of the tongue, oh, what's that word again? Now, of course, we've all experienced that. I've experienced that, for Pete's sake. But thinking back to frequency and severity, how often does it happen and how bad is it when it happens? Do I forget the word and then 2 seconds later, oh yeah, that's right, the word was this? Or am I constantly and continually struggling with those words in that it's making having conversations with people even more challenging? You might notice with problems with language that other words are being substituted with something that doesn't maybe fit the context of the sentence or the story. Or maybe we're telling stories or information out of chronological order. So it's not being told in the proper order, of course. But like I said earlier, language is an entire process. It's not just the output of speaking, but the input, the taking in of information as well. So do I find that when I'm sitting down to read a book, am I rereading the same page or the same sentence over and over, and it's not sticking? I can't get the information to stick in my brain. Or is it that, when I'm in, when I'm in a fast food restaurant and I'm looking up the menu board, there's so many different options and it's becoming so overwhelming so quickly that I have no idea what to order or what to choose. So there's a lot of different ways that problems with language can exhibit itself, but this is just a few different examples for you. And please, if at any point in time you have questions or you want me to elaborate, please stop me and I will. So the fourth warning sign is disorientation in time and space. And this one's a little bit odd, but I'll try and explain what this means. So again, thinking back to possible memory loss, and again, please excuse my dogs. They're very good guard dogs. This might be an example of a person where they've lived in the same home for years now. They're very familiar with the places that they normally are, but now they're starting to, possibly get misguided or get lost in a place that they're very familiar with. But even more so in places that they're not familiar with, or places that are very overwhelming, for example. So for example, take a shopping mall. I'm from the Hamilton area, so I like to go to Lime Ridge every now and then, but pre-pandemic days, man, that mall could get really busy and very crowded and very overwhelming very quickly. And thinking about that in the context of someone living with dementia, going to a shopping mall, for example, that, becomes overwhelming even more so, by tenfold for someone who has a healthy brain. So we might see that disorientation in space, where the individual is more likely to become lost or unaware of where they are. But in regards to time, it might also look like they're getting their times of day mixed up. One of the more common occurrences, one of the more common occurrences with disorientation in time is mixing up dawn and dusk. So having those two times mixed up during the day. This might also be a term that you've heard before. It's called sundowning, where during dusk in the later evening, the individual with dementia may become possibly more agitated or more confused at the end of the day. But thinking about that, there's probably a lot of reasons for that. Maybe they're tired, maybe they're hungry, lots of different reasons for that possible behavior. But again, another disorientation of time is that they might mix up times of day, or they might misunderstand what year it is. For them, it might be, they might be living in a different reality possibly than what we are. That's not very common, unless you're with someone who's more so in the mid to late stages of their dementia, but it is a possibility though. Pardon me. The fifth warning sign and you heard me mention this already, is impaired judgment. So being able to make decisions for oneself that are appropriate, plan or anticipate or organize. A really common example, and you can see on the screen here, is dressing inappropriately for the weather. You know, when we wake up in the morning, look outside, oh, it looks beautiful and sunny. I should go check the weather and see what the weather is going to be today so that I can dress appropriately. Again, a common occurrence might be that, you know, and this is examples in real life too, where we've seen individuals with dementia who are out and about on this freezing cold winter day, and they've got a t-shirt, pants, and slippers on. And of course, that's not appropriate winter wear, and they may get hurt because of that. Now, of course, again, that's a very extreme example, but there are smaller examples that might apply to impaired judgment. It might be that, you know, it's harder for an individual to pick up on social cueing. So sarcasm, for example, or understanding what behaviors are appropriate for what situation. Again, an extreme example, but this could be, you know, a person is at a funeral and instead of crying, they're laughing. But again, that's more so an extreme example. The impaired judgment, like I said, also, you know, this anticipation or this organization or planning. This is that ability to think of the future, think of things that are very abstract. And speaking of abstract, problems with abstract thinking is another warning sign. So abstract thinking, what does that exactly mean? Well, the opposite of the word abstract is tangible. So an object that is very tangible, I'm going to see what I've got here. My day planner, for example, very tangible object because I can see it, I can touch it, smell it, taste it, hear it. All my senses are engaged. So it's a very tangible object. However, for an abstract thought or an abstract object, if you will, my senses aren't engaged. So for example, numbers. Numbers are an example of abstract thinking, because numbers are just a theory, you know, they're not necessarily something that's real. So an example of that might be, you know, you're at the checkout and you are told that your total is $47.28. So now you're counting out the change, and doing that is becoming a little bit more overwhelming, or the numbers just aren't making sense in your head. Really, really common occurrence when we're talking about abstract thinking. But again, another idea of abstract thinking is thinking into the future about things that haven't happened yet, because it's not tangible, it's an abstract thought. Does that one make sense? That one's a little bit more challenging to describe. Does that one make sense? Yeah. A few other examples you might see, you know, balancing a checkbook, but not many people really do that anymore. Thank goodness for online banking. But even paying your bills as well, that might get a little bit more challenging. Oh, did I pay that bill yet? I'm pretty sure I did, but now we're overpaying things. And again, that can even be linked back to memory loss as well. So you can see how there's so much overlap between all of these different warning signs and the different reasons behind these possible warning signs. Number 7 is misplacing things. Again, we can link this back to memory loss, but there's a lot of different reasons as to why this may happen. So misplacing things, you know, around a common area that you're familiar with. So some of the more common examples we may see is hanging up clothing in a refrigerator. Well, I mean, that kind of makes sense. A refrigerator kind of sort of looks like a closet. Similar concept of opening up a door and hanging something in. We might see someone put their watch in a sugar bowl. So, you know, some people have jewelry dishes, and a sugar bowl and a jewelry dish might look quite similar. There's another word for this, and it's called altered perception. And this is possible reasoning as to why misplacing things may happen. Altered perception means that your sensory information that you're taking in gets misinterpreted. So what I'm talking about is your 5 senses. Usually, most often, it's your sight that can become affected. That's a pretty common one, where I'm looking at something and I'm misinterpreting what it is. Or I hear a sound For example, I hear my doorbell ring, but I go to pick up my phone and say hello. That's that misinterpretation or that altered perception. And again, that might be another reason why we see an individual misplacing things so often. And again, in a very familiar place, usually their home, for example. But thinking back, we've all misplaced things, where we've all put things in random spots that don't really make much sense. But thinking back to those two words of frequency and severity, and does it affect a person's day-to-day functioning and day-to-day abilities? Another one, and I did mention this a little bit earlier, and this is changes in mood and behavior. Now, thinking back to, we were talking about irreversible and permanent damage to someone's brain. Depending on where the damage is in someone's brain, we're going to see different kinds of behaviors come up. And I'll give you a few examples. If we see damage in someone's frontal lobe, this is this larger area in the front of the brain, behind your forehead, that is. I talked a lot about changes in judgment, in perception, in anticipation, and organization. All of that falls within the frontal lobe of the brain. That's the area of the brain that's responsible for those types of things. However, if a lot of the damage is in my occipital lobe, in the back of my brain, for example, then that is the area that's my visual processing center. So I'm going to have a lot more challenges with seeing things and understanding what they are, or even my peripheral vision might become affected as well. So it all depends where the damage is, and that will determine what kind of symptoms we're seeing. Do I think it's necessary for you to try and figure out and solve, okay, well, this one is linked to this part of the brain and this one's linked to that part of the brain? No, it's not important for you to try and problem solve or super sleuth that. It's just to give you the understanding and the awareness so that you understand, okay, this behavior is happening because there is damage in someone's brain, or there is suspected damage in somebody's brain. In regards more so back to the mood and behavior, we may see more frequent mood swings that become somewhat unpredictable or don't really make sense to us. So for example, a minor inconvenience happens, but the individual becomes very, very upset over something that is seemingly very small and minute, not worth getting super upset over, or at least it seems that way to us. Again, for a person with dementia, their perception of reality may be different from ours. So we have to keep that in mind too. And we've already kind of talked about the changes in behavior, and again, it all depends on where the damage is, but those changes in mood don't just happen out of the blue, and the changes in behavior don't just happen out of the blue. There's always a reason behind why someone is doing what they're doing, whether or not dementia is at play. A lot of the times we don't just wake up in the morning and think, okay, I'm going to do A, B, and C for no particular reason. No, we make a plan. This is what I'm planning on doing for the day, or this is how I'm feeling, or I have these particular thoughts which cause me to feel certain things and cause me to behave in a particular way. So all that being said, what I'm trying to say is that there are always legitimate reasons behind behaviors and behind moods. And if you're caring for someone living with dementia, it's your job to try and figure out what is it that's causing those things in the first place. It's not like a person living with dementia wakes up in the morning and goes, all right, I'm going to be a real nuisance today. I'm going to cause a lot of annoyance for everyone around me. Of course not. No one wakes up and does that. That's not the case, but there's always a reason behind the behavior or the mood swings possibly. So just keep that in mind. Excuse me. All right, number 9, changes in personality. This one is very much linked to the changes or the possible damage in the frontal lobe of someone's brain. It's understood that what makes you you and different from everybody else is this part of your brain, this frontal area. And if we see possible damage, or we know that there is possible damage in this front part of the brain, we may start to see someone change and act differently from their baseline behavior. There have been instances and occurrence in the past, and I had a caregiver tell me this story about her mom. So throughout her whole life, her mom was never really the nicest person. She was short. Short, not physically short. I mean, she was short with her children. She just wasn't a very kind individual. But oddly enough, the mom happens to get dementia as she gets older. And as time goes on and she progresses in her dementia, her personality begins to change. And all of a sudden, she's acting very kind and very sweet. And, oh, I'd love to see you and all these wonderful things. And the daughter says to me, I had no idea who I was dealing with because this was a totally different person, it seemed like, or at least it seemed that way. Now, I will say that changes in personality are much less common for dementia, but they can happen. It's a lot more rare though, but we can see an individual's personality traits begin to change over time. Now, on the screen here, it says behaving out of character, such as becoming confused, suspicious, or fearful. Excuse me. Well, being confused, suspicious, or fearful are all considered to be behaviors that can be associated with dementia, or as we like to call them, responsive behaviors. And just as I mentioned earlier, these responsive behaviors, there's a reason for them. They're in response to something happening to the individual. Why do they feel suspicious? Why are they feeling fearful? What is it that's causing them to feel that way? So again, that's our job to figure out and get down to the root cause and hopefully fix it for that individual. And the very last warning sign that you want to keep in mind and just, be aware of is this loss of initiative. So what it may look like from the outside, an outsider's perspective, what it may look like is that their get up and go has get up and gone, that they just don't seem to have the same interest in the things they once loved to do, whether it was going out in their garden and tending to that, going out for walks, seeing their friends and family, whatever it might be, it could be anything. But now all of a sudden, they just don't seem interested in it anymore. But why? Why is that happening? Thinking back, it all has to do with the damage in someone's brain. If my brain is damaged to a particular point, maybe I don't know how to initiate those activities. Maybe I'd really love to do them, but I just don't know how to start. Maybe I need someone else with me to help encourage me or show me what to do. And then that way I feel more confident in partaking in those activities. And, a lot of the times we see this loss of initiative say, oh, well, it seems like they're depressed. They just don't want to do anything anymore. And I will say right now that persons living with dementia can sometimes develop depression, but this loss of initiative is not depression in and of itself. It is a byproduct, a symptom of if you will, from the damage that's happening in their brain. But if you do suspect that maybe the person is becoming depressed or they're not handling their mental health very well, then that's when you would go to speak with a physician and hopefully get some professional help to step in there. Of course, we don't want to leave those things unattended to. So that pretty much brings me to the end of the warning signs. But before I continue on just talking about the services of the Alzheimer Society, I wanted to make something very, very clear. Giving you this information was not meant to scare you, not meant to frighten you, but to make you informed. So that if you have this information under your belt now, you can feel more confident and when you're speaking with somebody and say, I'm noticing some of these red flags going up. I wonder if this might be the case for them. Maybe they are experiencing dementia. And that might open up an opportunity for you to have a conversation with them and ask them, hey, how have you been doing lately? What's going on? I noticed that you're muddling up your sentences a lot more often than you used to, for one example, obviously. But having those open and honest conversations with individuals about the possibility of them having dementia is really important. I will say it's a really good idea to not just outright accuse someone of having dementia. I don't think anybody would appreciate that. But if you do want to have those conversations with somebody, approaching it gently, approaching it sort of softly and one step at a time is usually the best way to go. The other thing too is that if you're suspecting that somebody you know, or maybe even yourself, are experiencing the symptoms of dementia, the first thing that you ought to do is talk with your physician. They are your best line, not of defense, but best first line of support. That's what I'm trying to say. Talk with your physician, say, hey doc, I've been noticing some changes in myself or in whomever it is that you're speaking about, and see where they can go from there. They might refer you to a specialist. That might be a geriatrician. You might go to a memory clinic to get diagnosed or to do the assessments, I should say. But that is always the best first step, is to speak with your physician. The other best first step, if you will, is to call the Alzheimer Society. This is what we're here for. So at the Alzheimer Society, we offer a whack load of different support. Obviously, because of what I'm doing today, we have an education department. We offer educational support for care partners of persons living with dementia, but also for persons living with dementia as well. Excuse me. Pardon me. So we have educational support for everybody, and also for healthcare professionals, which also include first responders too. So if you know someone, sorry folks, pardon me. It's killing me. If you know someone who is interested in having some education sent their way, or organizing an education for a particular group, just give us a call, let us know. We're very happy to schedule anything. We also offer support and counseling for individuals, couples, families, whomever it may be that needs a little bit of extra support, and how to guide through a guide, if you will, through the journey of dementia. We also have a lot of different health and wellness programs going on. So we have programs that are meant for persons living with dementia to take part in, so that they can meet others in a similar situation to themselves, gain new relationships, new friendships. And a lot of the programs are meant so that the person with dementia can bring a guest with them as well, so they don't have to go on their own necessarily. Thanks so much for the note, Lisa. Appreciate it. And lastly, we also have a volunteer program too. So wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If you're looking for something to do in your spare time, we'd be very happy to have you as a volunteer. And lastly, just so you know, we are a not-for-profit charity. So the beautiful thing about that means that all of our services come at no cost. So no one has to worry about paying for any of our services. You come in our door, we have our arms open to help you. And you don't have to come in the door. You can also phone us. You can hop on our website. This is the information for that right there. So that's our 1-800 toll-free number, and obviously our website as well. On the map on the right-hand side shows the whole catchment area where we cover, all the way from Oakville, Milton area, all the way down to Simcoe. So we cover quite a large catchment area as well. At this point in time, I would like to say thank you very much for letting me speak with you. I would love if we can open up the floor for some questions now. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Mildred, if you want to stop recording.